The red dwarf sun of Thalos cast its dying light across the barren surface of Krithar, where Fortress Omega-9 stood like a monument to the Jar Alliance's military might. 50 years of interstellar war had turned this satellite into the most heavily fortified weapons depot in the Outer Rim systems. Its crystalline walls rose from the desert sands, bristling with energy shields, plasma cannons, and enough automated defenses to repel an entire fleet. Colonel Saren Cal stood before the massive holographic display in the fortress's command center, watching the swirling sandstorms that perpetually scoured Krithar's surface. The desert world was perfect for their purposes, hostile to life, invisible to most long-range scanners, and far enough from the main shipping lanes to avoid unwanted attention. The Jar Alliance had spent decades turning this remote outpost into an impregnable vault for their most destructive weapons. Status report. Ka'al commanded, his voice echoing through the sterile chamber. The colonel was a man shaped by war, his scarred face testament to countless battles fought across a dozen star systems. His uniform bore the insignia of the Jar Defense Corps, its silver threads catching the artificial light. Lieutenant Colonel Mira Hawks approached from her tactical station, her expression troubled. "Perimeter sensors are functioning normally, sir. All defensive grids are online. The quantum destabilizer remains secure in Vault 7, along with the other Class A weapons." Kal nodded, but something in Hawks's tone suggested more. "But we've detected an anomaly, sir. Sector 12's bioscanners picked up a single humanoid signature approximately 30 minutes ago. The readings indicate a human." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Humans were not supposed to be here. Not on Krithar, not within 50 light-years of Fortress Omega-9. The Alliance had made certain of that. "Impossible," Kal said flatly. "Run a full diagnostic on the scanners." "Already done, sir. The equipment is functioning perfectly." The signature passed through 3 separate security checkpoints without triggering any alarms. Kal turned to face his tactical officer fully. Mira Hawks had served under him for 7 years through the siege of Ptolemy Station and the bloody campaign at Rigel. She was not given to flights of fancy or sensor ghosts. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, revealing a 3-dimensional map of the fortress's interior. A thin red line traced a path from the outer perimeter, through multiple security zones, moving deeper into the facility with mechanical precision. What chilled Kal was not just the path itself, but how easily it had been traversed. The intruder passed through Checkpoint Alpha at 1422. Hawks continued highlighting sections of the map. Biometric scanners logged them as authorized personnel, despite having no record of the genetic markers in our database. Same thing happened at checkpoints Beta and Gamma.
"How is that possible?"
"Unknown, sir. The security AI seems to be accepting the presence as legitimate. All defensive systems remain inactive in the intruder's vicinity." Kal studied the projection, watching as the red line continued its inexorable advance toward the fortress's heart. This was wrong in every conceivable way. The security systems of Omega-9 had been designed by the finest minds in the Alliance, tested against every known infiltration technique. Nothing should be able to walk through their defenses like this. Current location: Level 15, Section C. The intruder appears to be heading toward the primary weapons vault. A cold dread settled in Kal's stomach. Level 15 housed some of their most sensitive equipment, including the quantum destabilizer, a weapon capable of destabilizing the molecular bonds of an entire planet. If someone was after that. "Seal the facility," Kal ordered. "Full lockdown. Deploy Hunter Team Alpha to intercept." "Yes, sir." Within minutes, the fortress transformed. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut with thunderous clangs that echoed through the corridors. Warning lights bathed everything in crimson shadows. Hunter Team Alpha, 4 of the Alliance's finest soldiers, moved out in perfect formation, their powered armor gleaming under the emergency lighting. Kal watched their progress through the security feeds, feeling the familiar weight of command decisions. These men were the best veteran warriors who had survived encounters with Catherian death squads and Valorian berserkers. If anyone could stop this intruder, it would be them. The hunters reached level 12, their thermal sensors sweeping the corridor ahead. Their leader, Sergeant Major Torvin, signaled for the team to spread out, taking positions to cover all possible escape routes. "Contact!" Torvin's voice crackled through the comm. "Visual on the target." Kahl leaned forward, watching the feed from Torvin's helmet camera. Through the enhanced optics, he could see a figure walking calmly down the corridor, definitely human, wearing simple civilian clothes that looked completely out of place in the military facility. The person seemed utterly unconcerned about the 40-ton blast doors or the armed soldiers now facing them. "Target appears unarmed," Torvin reported, moving to intercept. What happened next defied every tactical manual ever written. As the hunters closed in their weapons trained on the intruder, something inexplicable occurred. One by one, the soldiers began lowering their rifles. Torvin's voice, when it came through the comm, sounded distant and confused. "Sir, we're standing down." "Negative," Kahl barked. "Maintain formation. Apprehend the target." But on the screen, Kahl watched in growing horror as the 4 elite soldiers stepped aside, creating a clear path for the intruder to continue. The figure nodded politely to each of them as they passed, as if acknowledging old friends. "Hunter Team Alpha, respond." Kahl's voice carried an edge of desperation. Torvin's reply came slowly, as if from a dream. "Sir, they're authorized. System shows full clearance." The comm channel went dead. On the security feed, Kahl watched the intruder disappear around a corner, while Hunter Team Alpha remained motionless, their weapons lowered. "This is impossible," Hawks whispered beside him. Kahl's mind raced through possibilities. A new type of mind control technology. Some kind of neural disruptor. The Alliance had encountered various forms of psychological warfare, but nothing like this. "Deploy all Hunter teams," he ordered, "and initiate Protocol 7. Hawks hesitated. "Sir, Protocol 7 requires—" "I know what it requires, Lieutenant Colonel. Execute the order." Protocol 7 was psychological warfare in reverse, the deployment of nerve gas designed to heighten aggression and eliminate empathy. It was a last resort measure, one that would affect everyone in the affected areas, friendly and hostile alike. But if their people were being influenced somehow, the chemical cocktail might break whatever hold the intruder had over them. The fortress's ventilation system hummed to life, pumping the gas through specific sectors. Kahl watched the tactical display as 3 more hunter teams converged on the intruder's position. This time would be different. This time, they would stop this impossible infiltration. Hunter Team Bravo reached level 15 just as the intruder arrived at a major intersection. These soldiers moved differently, more aggressively, their movements sharp and predatory. The nerve gas was working. "Target acquired," came the harsh voice of Sergeant Brenvar. "Moving to neutralize." Kahl held his breath as he watched the feeds. 5 soldiers in full combat gear surrounded a single, unarmed human. Plasma rifles charged, ready to fire. This had to end here. But again, the impossible happened. As the soldiers closed in, the intruder did something that sent chills down Kahl's spine. They spoke. Though the audio feed couldn't pick up the words, Kahl could see the effect immediately. One by one, the soldiers' aggressive postures relaxed, weapons lowered. Sergeant Var actually took a step back, his rifle falling to his side. "Bravo team report." Silence. On the screen, Kahl watched the intruder continue past the motionless soldiers, who remained frozen in place like statues. This wasn't just technological, it was something far worse. Something that turned the Alliance's own people against their purpose, with nothing more than words. "Get me Admiral Chen," Kahl ordered, his voice tight with strain. "Admiral Chen, sir, he's in the Cathera system 3 days out by quantum tunnel." "Then get me someone from High Command, now." As Hawks worked her communication console, Kahl turned back to the tactical display. The intruder had reached level 16 only 2 levels from the primary weapons vault. At this rate, They would reach the quantum destabilizer within the hour. The comm system crackled to life, and the stern face of Admiral Voss appeared on the main screen. The Admiral's expression darkened as Call quickly briefed him on the situation. "This is unacceptable, Colonel," Voss said coldly. "How does a single human walk through our best defenses?"
I don't know, sir, but they're heading for Vault 7. If they reach the quantum destabilizer...
Then stop them. Use whatever means necessary. Sir, every team I've sent has been neutralized. Not killed, sir. They just stopped fighting. Admiral Voss was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face reflecting the weight of command. "Colonel Call, if that device falls into the wrong hands, it could destabilize an entire star system. Do you understand the implications?" "Yes, sir." "Then you have authorization for nuclear sterilization of the facility if necessary." The words hit Cal like a physical blow. Nuclear sterilization meant turning Fortress Omega-9 into a radioactive crater, weapons and all. It meant sacrificing everyone inside, including the nearly 3,000 personnel who called the fortress home. "Sir, request confirmation of that order." "Confirmed, Colonel. The quantum destabilizer cannot be allowed to leave Omega-9. If you cannot stop the intruder, you will destroy everything." The communication ended, leaving Call staring at the dark screen. 3,000 lives. His entire command. The fortress he had protected for 15 years. All to stop one human who seemed to walk through their defenses like they weren't even there. "Sir," Hawks's voice was barely a whisper. "The intruder has reached level 17. Call closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions. When he opened them again, his face was set with grim determination. "Deploy the Omega Squad." Sir, Hawks looked confused. "Omega Squad is stationed in the civilian quarters. They're not part of the security detail." "No," Call replied grimly. "But they're our last option before the nuclear option." Omega Squad was different from the hunter teams. These weren't soldiers, they were the fortress's senior staff. Scientists, engineers, administrators. People who knew every inch of the facility, and more importantly, people who understood exactly what was at stake. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the squad, her usually pristine lab coat, replaced by hastily donned body armor. As the facility's chief physicist, she understood better than anyone what the quantum destabilizer could do in the wrong hands. "Dr. Vasquez," Call's voice came through her earpiece. "You understand the situation?" "Perfectly, Colonel. One human somehow neutralizing our security forces, heading for the quantum device. Can you stop them?" Vasquez paused her team moving through the lower levels of the fortress. "Colonel, I've spent 20 years studying the physics of that device. I know its capabilities better than anyone. If someone manages to activate it outside our containment protocols..." "Doctor..." "I'll do whatever is necessary, Colonel." The physicist led her team through corridors that felt different now, charged with tension, and the acrid smell of the nerve gas that had failed to stop their mysterious intruder. They reached level 18 just as the security sensors detected movement above. "Targets on level 17 moving toward Vault 7, reported Dr. Henley, the facility's chief engineer. His normally steady hands trembled slightly as he checked his weapon, a plasma cutter adapted for combat use. Through the ventilation system, they could hear something unexpected, footsteps calm and measured echoing through the corridors above. This person wasn't running or sneaking. They were simply walking as if taking a leisurely stroll through a park. "Movement detected," whispered Dr. Kessler, the xenobiology specialist. "Approaching the main vault access." Vasquez signaled for the team to move into position. Unlike the soldier teams, they approached with a different strategy, using their knowledge of the facility's layout to get ahead of the intruder. They reached the main vault chamber before the intruder arrived, positioning themselves behind cover as the massive security door began its opening sequence. Vasquez watched in fascination and horror as the vault systems responded to the approaching presence, recognizing and authorizing access without any visible identification. The quantum destabilizer sat in the center of the vault, a crystalline structure the size of a small vehicle humming with barely contained energy. Its surface reflected the chamber's lights in patterns that hurt to look at directly, a visual representation of its reality warping capabilities. The intruder appeared in the doorway, and Vasquez got her first clear look at them. Definitely human, definitely male, appearing to be in his 30s. What struck her most was how ordinary he looked, like someone she might pass on the street in any human colony. "Stop!" she called out, her voice echoing in the vault. "You're not authorized to be here." The man, she couldn't think of him as anything else, turned toward her with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. When he spoke, his voice was calm, pleasant even. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, I presume your work on quantum mechanics is quite impressive. Your paper on probability cascades was particularly insightful." The casual mention of her research sent a chill through her. That paper had been classified, restricted to the highest levels of Alliance security. "Who are you?" she demanded, her weapon trained on him. "You can call me Jack," he replied, taking a step closer to the quantum destabilizer. "As for who I am, well, that's a complicated question." Dr. Henley moved to flank Jack, his plasma cutter charged and ready. "Step away from the device." Jack glanced at him and smiled, the expression that seemed genuinely warm. "Dr. Henley, your modifications to the fortress's power grid are remarkable. Though I do think you could improve efficiency by about 12% with some adjustments to the quantum coupling in Section 5. Henley hesitated, his weapon wavering. How could this stranger know about modifications that weren't even in the official reports? "Don't listen to him," Vasquez warned. "Whatever he's doing to the others, fight it." Jack approached the quantum destabilizer, running his hand along its surface with the familiarity of someone who had done this before. "Dr. Vasquez, what do you think this device actually does?" "It destabilizes quantum fields on a planetary scale," she replied automatically. "It can unravel the molecular bonds of matter itself." Correct, but incomplete. Jack touched a control panel, and the device responded immediately, systems coming online that shouldn't have been accessible without a dozen different authorizations. It doesn't just destabilize quantum fields, it gives access to the underlying code of reality itself. The crystalline structure began to glow brighter, and Vasquez felt a strange sensation, as if the air itself was becoming thicker, more substantial. "Stop him!" she shouted. But when she looked around, she realized her team was no longer moving. Dr. Henley stood motionless, his weapon at his side. Kessler and the others had the same distant expression that had affected all the security teams. "How?" she whispered. Jack's fingers danced over the device's controls with impossible familiarity. "The quantum field doesn't just affect matter, Doctor. It affects information, consciousness, the very patterns that make up what you call reality." "That's impossible. Consciousness isn't quantum-based." "Isn't it?" Jack turned to face her, and for a moment, Vasquez thought she saw something else behind his eyes, something vast and incomprehensibly complex. Every thought, every decision, every memory, it's all quantum information. And this device doesn't just manipulate matter. The realization hit her like a physical blow. You're rewriting people, their thoughts, their perceptions. "Not rewriting," Jack corrected gently. "Simply removing the barriers that prevent them from seeing what's actually happening. Your security systems recognize me because, in a very real sense, I belong here. I always have." The control chamber's alarms began screaming as the quantum destabilizer reached full operational status. Vasquez could feel something changing in the air, a wrongness that made her skin crawl. In the command center, Colonel Call watched the feeds from Vault 7 with growing desperation. Every one of his teams had failed. The fortress's best and brightest now stood motionless as this impossible human activated the most dangerous weapon in Alliance space. "Sir Hawks," reported, her voice strained. "The quantum destabilizer is at 70% charge and climbing. At current rate, it will reach full activation in 6 minutes. And then—" "I don't know, sir. The device has never been tested at full capacity." Call stared at the tactical display, watching the power readings climb toward levels that his instruments could barely register. Admiral Voss's words echoed in his mind: nuclear sterilization if necessary. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel," he ordered finally. "Prepare the solar pulse system." Hawks paled. The solar pulse was Fortress Omega-9's ultimate defense, a system that could channel the energy of Thalos's red dwarf directly into the facility's power grid. Originally designed as an emergency power source, it had been weaponized as a last resort. It would turn the entire fortress into a brief, artificial star. "Sir, the solar pulse will destroy everything. The fortress, the weapon stockpile, everyone inside." "I'm aware of the consequences, Lieutenant Colonel. But if that device leaves this facility, the consequences for the Alliance will be far worse." As evacuation alarms joined the cacophony filling the fortress, Call made his way down to level 17. If he was going to trigger humanity's ultimate weapon, he would do it himself. He owed that much to the people under his command. The corridors were chaos now, personnel running toward evacuation pods, while emergency systems screamed warnings about quantum field instability. Call pushed through the crowds, his colonel's insignia opening a path through the panicking masses. He reached the outer chamber of Vault 7 just in time to see something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Through the reinforced, transparent aluminum of the observation window, he could see the man called Jack standing before the quantum destabilizer. But now, as the device reached critical resonance, the air around him was changing. Reality itself seemed to ripple, like looking through water. Where Jack stood, the normal laws of physics appeared to be negotiable suggestions, rather than absolute rules. The device wasn't just powered, it was singing a harmonic frequency that made Call's bones ache. "Colonel Call." The voice came from behind him, and Call spun to find Jack standing in the corridor. Not a projection, not a hologram, Jack himself, even though Call could see him still standing in the vault through the window. "That's impossible," Call breathed. "Many things are possible when you understand the quantum nature of reality," Jack replied calmly, "including being in two places at once." Call drew his sidearm, a military-grade plasma pistol that could burn through starship armor. "Step away from the device, now." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Colonel, though I appreciate the position this puts you in. You have no idea what you're dealing with. That device could destroy entire star systems." Jack's expression grew sad. "Colonel, I know exactly what this device can do. I helped design it." The words hit Call like a physical blow. "That's impossible. The quantum destabilizer was developed by Alliance scientists over a period of 30 years. Based on fragments of technology recovered from human archaeological sites," Jack finished. "Technology that your people found, but never truly understood." "You're lying." The ruins on Kessler 4, the quantum resonance chambers on New Babylon, the probability manipulation devices found in the Antares system. Jack began walking toward Cal, who felt his weapon hand trembling. All human in origin, all part of a network spanning dozens of worlds. Humans don't have that level of technology. We're barely capable of interstellar travel. Jack stopped just out of reach, his eyes reflecting the red emergency lighting. "The humans you know don't. But humanity is older than your Alliance realizes. Much older." In the vault, the quantum destabilizer reached 90% charge. The device's harmonic frequency had grown so intense that it was affecting the fortress's structure, metal groaning displays flickering reality itself, seeming to bend around the epicenter of so much concentrated quantum energy. "What do you want?" Call demanded. "To go home," Jack said simply. "To take back what was always ours." The implications crashed over Cal like a tide. "You're saying humans built this fortress? These weapons?" "Not humans as you understand them. But yes, this place was built by my people, as were many of the weapons and technologies your Alliance has claimed as its own." Call's mind reeled. "If that's true, why now? Why reveal yourself after all this time?" Jack's expression hardened. Because your alliance is about to use weapons you don't understand in ways that could damage the quantum substrate of local space. My people can't allow that. The fortress shook as the quantum destabilizer approached full charge. Through the window, Cal could see reality distorting around the device space itself, bending in ways that hurt to perceive directly. I have to stop you, Cal said, raising his weapon. I have orders. I know. Jack's voice was gentle, almost sympathetic. And I understand why you think you need to follow them. But Colonel, you should know that your solar pulse system won't work against the quantum field I'm generating.
How do you?
How do I know about the solar pulse? Because I helped design that too. Hidden subroutines, Colonel. Backdoors built into systems your people thought they understood. Cal fired. The plasma bolt passed through Jack harmlessly, as if he wasn't truly there. Behind him, the wall showed a scorch mark where the energy had dissipated. Quantum superposition, Jack explained calmly. I exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. Your weapon can only affect one of them. The device reached full charge and suddenly the chaos of the fortress fell silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from the absence of sound, but a deeper quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Jack walked to the control panel for the solar pulse system, his fingers moving with impossible knowledge over controls that should have required a dozen different authorization codes. One by one, the system's safeguards disengaged. You're not going to activate it, Cal realized with growing horror. You're going to sabotage it. Not sabotage, Jack corrected. Modify. The solar pulse will still fire, Colonel. But instead of destroying the fortress, it will provide the final energy needed to activate the quantum network. What network? Jack gestured to the vault where the quantum destabilizer now pulsed with energy that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal space. Every Alliance facility built on human ruins. Every weapon derived from human technology. They're all connected, Colonel. Nodes in a network that spans hundreds of worlds. And you're activating it. I'm coming home, we all are. The fortress trembled as Jack completed his modifications to the solar pulse system. Through the transparent walls, Cal could see Thalos's red dwarf, responding solar flares, reaching out toward the planet, like grasping fingers. Your people will be safe, Jack assured him. The evacuation pods will carry them far enough away to avoid the transformation. Transformation. You said you weren't going to destroy the fortress. I'm not. Jack smiled, and for the first time, it didn't seem entirely human. I'm going to change it back into what it was always meant to be. The solar energy struck Fortress Omega-9 with the force of a small star. But instead of vaporizing the facility, the power flowed into the quantum destabilizer, which distributed it through pathways that Cal now realized weren't part of the Alliance's design. They had always been there waiting. Reality shuddered. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, Alliance facilities built on human ruins suddenly came alive with impossible light. Weapons that had been inactive for millennia awakened. Technologies that humanity had forgotten how to use remembered their original purpose. Cal felt the fortress changing around him. Not being destroyed, but transformed walls reshaping themselves systems, reconfiguring to patterns that followed no engineering principles he knew. The sterile military installation was becoming something else, something organic and alive and utterly alien to everything the Alliance understood about architecture and technology. "Who are you people?" he whispered. Jack turned to face him one last time, and Cal saw that the transformation extended to him as well. His features were shifting, becoming something more and less than human. "We were you," Jack said sadly. "What humanity could have become if we hadn't chosen a different path. We spread throughout the galaxy, built wonders, touched the quantum foundations of reality itself. And then, we transcended physical form, became beings of pure information, living in the quantum substrate."
Then why?
Why come back? Because our children, your people, were about to break something that took us eons to build. The quantum network that binds the galaxy together. We couldn't let that happen. The fortress completed its transformation. Where once a military installation had stood, now something impossible existed, a structure that bent space and time, that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. A bridge between the realm of matter and the quantum substrate where Jack's people lived. Cal found himself standing in an evacuation pod, watching from a distance as Fortress Omega-9 became something beyond his comprehension. He had no memory of getting into the pod, but somehow he knew Jack had placed him there, along with the few hundred personnel who had survived the transformation. "This is Colonel Cal to any Alliance vessel," he said into his communicator, not knowing if anyone would hear him across the space that now separated him from what had once been his command. "Fortress Omega-9 has been compromised. The quantum destabilizer, the weapons, they're gone." In response, his communicator crackled to life with a voice he recognized as impossible as everything else that had happened. "One human walked in," Jack's voice came through clearly. "No one walked out. But perhaps, Colonel, that's because the distinction between walking in and walking out isn't as clear as your people believe." Cal stared at the transformed fortress through the pod's viewport. Through quantum resonance chambers that his sensors couldn't properly read, he could see figures moving, beings of light and energy that had once been human, now returned to a reality they had shaped long before the Alliance existed. "What happens now?" he asked the empty air. The answer came not from his communicator, but from inside his own mind, a gift from beings that existed in the spaces between thoughts. "Now, Colonel, your people learn that they were never alone. That humanity's destiny was written in quantum probability long before your Alliance took its first steps into space. The question is whether you'll accept that destiny or fight against it." As Kyle's evacuation pod drifted through space, carrying him toward the rendezvous point, where Alliance ships would soon arrive to find their most secure facility, transformed beyond recognition, he considered the choice that now faced not just him, but all of humanity. Behind him, Fortress Omega-9 pulsed with energies that belonged to a species that had transcended physical existence eons ago, yet had never truly left the quantum foundations of the reality their descendants still called home. One human had walked into their fortress, but as Jack had said, no one had walked out. Instead, something far more extraordinary had walked in: the recognition that the boundaries between human and posthuman, between reality and quantum possibility, between past and future, were far more flexible than anyone had imagined. The transformation was only beginning. Across the galaxy, on every world where the Alliance had built upon human ruins, similar changes were taking place. The quantum network was reactivating, and with it, a branch of humanity that had been waiting patiently, in the spaces between reality, for their children to grow wise enough to rejoin them. Or perhaps Cal thought, as he watched space itself ripple around the transformed fortress, they had decided not to wait any longer. The war between the Jar Alliance and the human colonies would take on entirely new dimensions, now fought not just with ships and weapons, but with the fundamental forces that governed reality itself. And somewhere in the quantum substrate that connected all things, beings that had once been human smiled with satisfaction at a plan 50,000 years in the making, finally coming to fruition. The fortress stood transformed, a monument no longer to military might, but to the infinite possibility that existed when consciousness learned to touch the quantum foundations of existence itself. One human had walked in, no one had walked out. But what had emerged was something far greater than the sum of those who had entered a bridge between what humanity was and what it could become, built from the willing sacrifice of those brave enough to step beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. And in the depths of space, as Cal's pod continued its journey toward an uncertain future, the quantum destabilizer sang its harmonic frequency across dimensions, calling home the scattered children of a species that had never really left. The age of transcendence had begun.